Israel is running out of time to save the country, not from Hamas, which lacks the means to defeat Israel militarily, but from itself. Israel's war crimes in Gaza, verging on genocide according to the Center for Constitutional Rights, threaten to destroy Israel's civil, political, economic, and cultural relations with the rest of the world. Israel is in a grave position right now. There are growing calls for Prime Minister Netanyahu to resign, but unfortunately, he is leading Israel into the same trap the US fell into after 9/11. If Israel embraces Netanyahu's stance that this is a time for war, Israel will isolate itself from the rest of the world and pay a devastating price. In today's video, I'm going to reveal the shocking resemblance that Israel's warpath shares with 9/11, as well as the chilling truth behind Israel's real long-term goal in Gaza and beyond. I'll also reveal whether there can ever be a real diplomatic solution that could establish true peace in the Middle East. The answer will surprise you, so let's break it down. The truth is that there are remarkable similarities between Al-Qaeda's terrorist attacks on 9/11 and Hamas attacks on Israel just over a month ago. In the case of Hamas, its goal on October 7th was to provoke Israel into a long and bloody war and make Israel commit war crimes to bring on the world's condemnation. The same is true for Al-Qaeda's 9/11, which also provoked American politicians to launch disastrous wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, and beyond. The result was carnage, torture by the US, $8 trillion of debt, and the collapse of US prestige and power. This is a classic political use of terror, not merely to kill, but to frighten, provoke, debase, and ultimately undermine the foe. And we are seeing Israel fall into this exact same trap now, as its onslaught into Gaza is turning its friends around the world against it. While Hamas demonstrated its capacity to commit a surprise terrorist attack, Hamas is a small resistance group that poses absolutely no threat to militarily defeating Israel. The same was true with Al-Qaeda and 9/11. The attacks were a catastrophic failure of US Homeland Security and intelligence, but not a threat of any kind that would result in a US military defeat. The same is true for Israel, which frankly let down its guard in the lead up to October 7th. The way Israel prevents Hamas from a repeat attack is not by invading and obliterating Gaza, but by bolstering Israel's borders and security intelligence. It's worth resharing political scientist Ian Bremmer's wise words, who tells it exactly as it is. Destroying Hamas will make Israel more safe. Destroying the lives of 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza will make Israel less safe. Protecting the lives of civilians is a matter of basic humanity. It's also in the self-interest of Israeli citizens. However, there's another deep similarity between Al-Qaeda's 9/11 and Hamas's October 7th, which will utterly shock you. By now, it's well documented that Al-Qaeda was a US creation. By covertly funding Islamic jihadists in Afghanistan to fight the Soviet Union during the 1980s, the CIA effectively launched this terrorist group. Of course, this later backfired and quite literally blew up in the United States' face. And once again, Israel has made the exact same mistake. In this article from the Times of Israel, a frustrated Israeli author states, "For years, Netanyahu propped up Hamas. Now it's blowing up in our faces." This shows you just how corrupt and unethical a leader Netanyahu truly is. He was willing to back and support a terrorist organization like Hamas for the sole reason of dividing and weakening the Palestinian Authority and preventing Palestine from achieving statehood. And now Netanyahu and his cabinet have told the Israeli population that there is no alternative to achieve security and peace other than to invade Gaza and defeat Hamas. But here are the cold hard facts. Number one, Israeli leaders are seeking to cover up their blunders by invading Gaza, but it's a proven fact that a military assault on Gaza is completely counterproductive to Israel's long-term security and the safety of its citizens. Number two, defeating Hamas inside Gaza isn't a straightforward mission. Hamas has the advantage of urban guerrilla warfare on its own turf, and a large number of Israeli soldiers are likely to die in a major ground operation. Once again, political scientist Ian Bremmer argues it's impossible to defeat Hamas due to the large number of armed fighters they have in Gaza, and that the scale of Israeli military operations and human cost for civilians will be far greater than what we've witnessed so far. And number three, there has been a large number of civilian casualties. Since the war began, more than 11,000 Palestinian civilians, 2/3 of them women and children, have been killed in Gaza according to the territory's health ministry. Last week, the UN Secretary General made a spine-chilling statement. Gaza is becoming a graveyard for children. Hundreds of girls and boys are reportedly being killed or injured every day. Ground operations by the IDF and continued bombardment are hitting civilians, hospitals, refugee camps, mosques, churches, and UN facilities, including shelters. No one is safe. For decades, Israel has denied basic human, economic, and political rights to the Palestinian people. Its occupation of Palestine is equivalent to apartheid in the view of human rights groups such as Amnesty International, and has been famously described by Human Rights Watch as an open-air prison. However, here are where things get truly chilling. The real goal of Israel over the past decades actually has little to do with defeating Hamas. Just listen to what America's best-known international relations scholar, John Mearsheimer, revealed about Israel's military assault on Gaza. The campaign in Gaza is said to have two objectives: weakening Hamas and restoring Israel's deterrent. But these are not the real goals. The actual purpose is connected to Israel's long-term vision of how it intends to live with millions of Palestinians in its midst. It is part of a broader strategic goal, the creation of a greater Israel. Specifically, Israel's leaders remain determined to control all of what used to be known as Mandate Palestine, which includes Gaza and the West Bank. The Palestinians would have limited autonomy and a handful of disconnected and economically crippled enclaves, one of which is Gaza. Israel would control the borders around them, movement between them, the air above, and the water below them. The key to achieving this is to inflict massive pain on the Palestinians so that they come to accept the fact that they are a defeated people and that Israel will largely be responsible for controlling their future. What's incredible about this quote from John Mearsheimer is that he exposes the most crucial aspect of this entire conflict: the simple fact that Israel never wants to see Palestine achieve official statehood and will do anything in its power to prevent it. In seeking its revenge on Hamas, the Israeli Defense Force has targeted a university, schools, mosques, homes, apartment buildings, government offices, refugee camps, and even ambulances. A senior Israeli military official explained the logic behind Israel's expansive target. There are many aspects of Hamas, and we are trying to hit the whole spectrum because everything is connected and everything supports terrorism against Israel. Basically, what this means is that in the eyes of Israel, everyone is a terrorist and everything is a legitimate target. John Mearsheimer concludes with the following statement: "There is little chance that people around the world who follow the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will soon forget the appalling punishment that Israel is meting out in Gaza. The destruction is just too obvious to miss. What is happening in Gaza will long be seen as a dark stain on Israel's reputation. The bottom line is that no matter what happens on the battlefield, Israel cannot win its war in Gaza. In fact, it's pursuing a strategy that is placing its long-term future at risk." But here is the most amazing part of these quotes from John Mearsheimer. None of them are recent. In fact, they are all over 14 years old. They come from this article entitled "Another War, Another Defeat," which Mearsheimer wrote for the American Conservative in 2009, and states, "The Gaza offensive has succeeded in punishing the Palestinians, but not in making Israel more secure." The article was written 14 years ago, but honestly, it reads as if it were written in 2023. Not only is this a chilling testament to Israel's real vision for Gaza and Palestinians in general, but it could not more clearly demonstrate just how shockingly unchanged Israel has been in its brutal policies. The failure of Israel's political class to achieve true security for Israel and justice for Palestine must open the door to a radically different approach, an approach that includes a political solution for Palestine coupled with legitimate and comprehensive security arrangements for Israel. According to Columbia University's Jeffrey Sachs, another outstanding voice of reason in global affairs, here is what that solution looks like. The UN Security Council would commit to the disarming of militant groups including Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Countries funding and arming these groups, notably Iran, would agree to join with the UN Security Council in defunding and demobilizing these groups as part of the peace deal. Both Saudi Arabia and Iran would establish diplomatic relations with Israel, as part of the peace deal. Israel and the United Security Council would recognize a sovereign, independent, and secure state of Palestine with its capital in East Jerusalem and with full membership in the United Nations. Palestine would be given sovereign control over the Muslim holy sites of East Jerusalem, including Haram al-Sharif. Professor Sachs goes on to remind us that the 5 permanent powers of the UN Security Council, USA, Russia, China, UK, and France, all favor such a peace deal. Not only that, but the rest of the UN member states also clearly support a two-state solution. He also asserts that Iran can be brought on board to such a deal, as long as the deal includes the normalization of Iran's diplomatic and economic relations with the EU and US. Indeed, in recent years, Iran has shown interest in dynamic and creative diplomacy. In 2015, Iran negotiated the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action with the US and EU to end Iran's nuclear weapons program in return for an end to Western sanctions. And more recently, Iran has reconciled with Saudi Arabia and will be formally joining the BRICS alliance with China in January 2024. I'll finish today's video with a perfect quote from Jeffrey Sachs, whose recent article, Israel's Chance to Turn Carnage into Peace, was the inspiration for today's video. As soon as Israel embraces a comprehensive peace deal, it will garner friends worldwide and cause a worldwide sigh of relief. If Israel swallows Netanyahu's poison that this is a time for war, Israel will isolate itself from the rest of the world and pay a devastating price. Israel's attainable objective is lasting peace and security through diplomacy. Israel's friends, starting with the US, must help it choose diplomacy over war. Friends do not let friends commit crimes against humanity, much less provide them with the finances and arms to do so. Everyone, thank you for making it to this point in the video. I greatly appreciate your support and taking time out of your day to spend it with me here on YouTube, and I look forward to seeing you all in our next videos soon.